So, hello. I hope the microphone works and I hope I stand in the right light, whatever. So we are on day 3 of the expanded conference. We already learned a lot. And this is the last panel, the ASIFA Austria Forum. I start with something very important. We had a meetup up there before. There's somebody missing sunglasses. Maybe this person is in the audience. It's very important today to have sunglasses. Yes. Okay. First of all, if you still have friends who desperately want to see, for example, Dagmar's presentation, we also have a live stream. So please tell your friends still that they should watch it on YouTube as well. But thanks for coming in person. And thank you in that case, in the ASIFA Austria Forum, especially thank you to ASIFA. I will try to explain now what ASIFA is, and also in that case to Gold Extra, which support. Gold Extra is a collective that I'm part of, and Charlie and Sonia of them are here, and they also supported this panel. And ASIFA, it's the Association, did I write it down? Internationale de Film d'Animation, which exists since 60 years, founded in France, I think in Annecy back then. And there's also the Austrian branch, which is called ASIFA Austria, which also exists already since 40 years. And for example, I'm part of ASIFA, and some years ago we started this collaboration that they also support this panel, just to let you know what ASIFA is. 40 years, it organizes festivals like the Best Austrian Animation Festival, the Under the Radar Festival. It has an exhibition space in Vienna, which is called ASIFA Keil. And there's also a beautiful book of ASIFA about this ASIFA Keil with 130 exhibitions. And it has a studio in Vienna, an archive, meetups. This year, still 40 years, festivities coming up, and so on and so on. So thank you to the supporters of this panel. And with these words, I'm trying to come to the first speaker, which is Dagmar Schürrer. She is an Austrian digital artist based in Berlin. She has a degree in fine art at Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London, working in the field of animation and extended reality. She's often inspired by scientific concepts from biology and neuroscience, creates hybrid experiences, combines her technologies in XR with artificial intelligence, tries to include poetic interpretations of human consciousness. And she showed her work basically everywhere, to name a few: ICA London, Haus der Kultur in der Welt, Louvre Auditorium Paris, Tate Modern London, to name a few. She's an artistic research assistant and workshop leader for XR development at the University of Applied Sciences Berlin, and board member of the Berlin Media Art Association. Dagmar, the stage is yours.
Okay, it's on, yes, okay. Thanks, Rani, for the nice introduction, and thanks for the invitation. And welcome everyone to my talk, Entangled Techno-Realities, Poetic Spaces of Augmented Minds. Basically, I will talk about my body of work, Where Does the Rest of the World Begin?, which is a multimedia installation consisting of digital animations with sound, 3D prints, and an interactive mixed reality experience. So all the different modules are connected, and then in an exhibition setting, they're basically set up like as a spatial narrative. So you have large-scale projections, 3D prints in the space, and all the modules are connected by the mixed reality application. Yeah, so it's the latest of my works, or in a series of works, which reflects on the entanglement of human cognition, natural environment, and current technology. And as Reini already said, I often utilize scientific insights in my work from symbiosis and from biology and neurosciences, and try to make them kind of accessible through my artistic interpretation on a more intuitive and emotional level. Yeah, so I think in general, it's quite an important part of my practice to connect screen-based animation, 3D animation, with XR technologies. I think it's a good way for me to kind of allow an engagement of multiple layers simultaneously, and also it's kind of an attempt of distributing storytelling in a spatial way. So, and this one, so I worked for quite a few years with augmented reality on tablets and smartphone devices, and this was actually the first headset-based mixed reality work I did, which was quite an exciting step for me. And I think the potential of the mixed reality or this installation format for me really unfolded during the first opening last year. So the mixed reality space is basically designed like a digital experience space. So you can enter it with your body, you interact with the objects, and it doesn't really have a classical timely narrative. So you, as the user, decide yourself how long you stay in, how long you want to play in the space. And at the opening, we had quite a few headsets, like 7, 8 or something. And it was really nice that in the end people just mingled and chatted with each other, and some were wearing headsets, some were not. So it was like, it was this kind of where really the technology or the work really merged with the situation. And I think that was for me a really, a nice kind of, okay, I want to work more with that, because this is where the potential lies of this experience, and also turns it really in a hybrid experience actually. So as I take a lot of inspiration by sciences, I will also structure my talk loosely along this 4E cognition theory. The 4E cognition theory is basically opposes like a traditional concept of cognition as a singular phenomena confined to our brains, but instead offers a framework to read cognition as heavily entangled with our body, environment, and also other devices, technological devices, and so on. And basically here, thinking is not just computing in the brain, but actually action with the body in the world. So it is world making and kind of co-creation through world making of reality. So I start with embedded. Embedded cognition is always situated in a cultural, social, and environmental context. So in the installation, the viewer is basically embedded in a spatial hybrid environment, and you have various media simultaneously, and the whole narrative is spatially distributed, and it's kind of an installation of layered poetical fragments. And I also look at embeddedness through symbiotic relationships, also from the poetic, the perspective of poetic science, which is like told in a narrative which I would call derived from a data-based logic or narrative. So, symbiosis. The concept of symbiosis was actually the starting point of the whole work or research. Symbiosis is a concept originally from biology and was mainly shaped by the microbiologist Lynn Margulis. So she worked on this since the 1960s, and she always emphasized cooperation and mutual dependence as the primary forces of evolutionary development. So she, of course, she focused on the microbial world, but and so in the endosymbiotic theory, which was basically her first main publication in '67, she was talking about or showing how multicellular life actually emerged through symbiosis of free-living bacteria and cells. So larger host cells absorb the smaller one, integrate them in their processes, and so developed actually into more complex multicellular organisms. She later then went on and throughout her career actually extended this theory beyond microbiology. So she developed a more holistic view of symbiotic system. She was heavily involved in the Gaia theory with James Lovelock, and always on foregrounding cooperation and competition. And of course, this all challenged the Darwinian's theory of the survival of the fittest, which at these times, 70s, 80s, was super controversial because it's their theory in biology or evolution studies. So it was very controversial back then, and it took quite a long time. Even she's a very charismatic feminist figure to be accepted in the academic world or in the sciences. But now, or today, symbiosis, of course, is all over. It's a very common word or common concept which is used in very many disciplines like philosophy, ecology, arts, and so on. And it is a kind of powerful metaphor for human technology integration, especially when we think of AI, biotechnology, or immersive digital environments. So symbiosis coming from the biological theory was kind of the first thought on this triangle of cognition, environmental contexts, and technology, and also as symbiosis is a process of progress, actually. So this went on, so the theory of Margulis and this world of microbiology was also one of the main references then for the visual motifs. So here you have some stills from the key animation, the longer key animation, which consists of a stream of visual tableaus. So you see speculative landscapes, body parts, abstract patterns, kind of like, these microbial structures. And they were all made in a kind of digital world building process in the 3D software Blender. So they're very stylized, they're very fantastical. So they also always kind of oscillate between like a figurative depiction and an abstract pattern. And the animation itself also unfolds as a rolling set of these visual tableaus. So each of them more like a glimpse into a possible artistic manifestation of the idea of symbiosis. And in theory, for me, you could also kind of rearrange this sequence. So it just is a set of stimuli. You could actually extend it infinitely. It is not, it doesn't have a timely logic like a classical narrative. So in a way, you could say it is more follows the idea of a database. And I took a selection of the speculative environments from this database and presented as the stream of poetical fragments. Yeah, and so when you enter the installation, the first thing you hear or you're embedded in is this meditative voiceover. It hovers across the exhibition space and tries to connect all the different modules you see in the space. And it also follows the same rhythmical structure as the animation. It's a stream of speculative poetry that transfers the scientific concepts I mentioned actually into a lyrical language. And the voiceover kind of hallucinates in this poetic language about different scenarios of symbiosis and synchrony and this kind of biological ideas found in these various configurations of the relationship from human, technology, organisms, environment. So also this is similar to the imagery, an attempt to transfer the scientific insights or the scientific texts into a poetic interpretation. So it's kind of trying to emphasize alternative ways of producing and consuming and sharing knowledge. So this is now I'm going to show you a little excerpt of the longer animation, so you get a first impression.
Generated living machines, fusing flesh and codes. A programmed phylum of elusive links. Inclusive hybrid bodies emerge, transcending individual essence. Embracing collaborative appliances. Embracing the infinitely small, processing new building blocks. Predictable, functional, executable. Artificial molecules turn into living matter. A programmed promise, a synthia. Synthia transcended itself and became many, enabling a gentle, pulsating navigation through noise-free and wireless steering, with delicate hydraulics for seamless embedding, extending organic norms, transforming perceptions of existing systems, latent potentials for an energetic equilibrium. Bobtail squids use bioluminescent bacteria to simulate the moonlight, hiding its shadow to deceive his predators. In return, the squid provides a safe habitat and nutrients for the bacteria. Pulsing chemical conversations. A fierce process of co-becoming. and intimate and persistent.
Okay, that's for a first impression. It's about 12-13 minutes long, actually, in the original version. So next I want to look at how these wider environments and symbiotic systems are actually lived through the body. So embodied cognition emphasizes that movement and bodily experience are actually integral to thinking. And in the installation, this is reflected conceptually through the theory of neurosynchrony on the one hand, and on the other hand through the setup of a sensory experience, which is discovered through movement and rhythm and interaction. So neurosynchrony is actually a phenomena studied in neuroscience and cognitive studies. And at its core, it describes how brain activity can align between two or more people in moments of close interaction. There can be face-to-face conversation, social interactions, consumption of similar media, or synchronized physical movement, as in like a collective rhythm or ritual performance. So, so this is one of the theories of neurosynchrony. And this is especially in music and dance, this process of alignment is very well researched and measured. And dance, of course, I mean, we all know in the laboratory it's all like there and measured, and outside the laboratory, dance got also a lot of attention. I found in my research as a kind of how do you say, as not as a personal expression, but as a kind of vehicle for collective physical movement and kind of alignment in rhythm to kind of create spaces of intimacy and belonging. And in science, this is thought of that people and brains form like temporarily this kind of cognitive clusters, which you could call a form of hypermind. So the body is kind of constantly connected and synchronized through exchange and is not singular, but connected with other bodies and the world. So this thoughts on synchronization and bodily alignment is reflected in the second digital animation. Here you encounter a series of these digital avatars. They are also very highly stylized humanoid figures, and they're kind of extended by these microbial and technological elements. And they're then multiplied, and they perform these synchronized dance movements in these infinite loops. So the composition is again like this, that the avatars almost dissolve with the background, so they're continuously oscillating between this figurative stylized composition and these abstract patterns of the backgrounds. And in a way, like the bodies almost kind of sense each other in the movement, and because it's going on infinitely, they fall into this hypnotic flow of repetition and performance and collective ritual. So cognition, of course, is not only linked to the body, but it's also extended into artifacts, devices, and environments. And in the installation, you could say the viewer is extended by a headset with which you later enter the mixed reality environment. And the animation and the 3D prints are augmented by the digital content of the MR application. So it kind of spans between the sculptures and the projection, and it creates a kind of dynamic field of play in the installation and opens this other additional layer to the animation experience. So the app is developed in the game engine Unity for the latest Quest 3 headset, which you see in the picture there. The Quest 3 are standalone devices, and they have this high-definition pass-through mode. So this means that you can see the digital content, but you still also see the analog environment, the other players, the sculptures, the projections, and so on. So the objects you see in the mixed reality are directly referencing the animations. So they are like kind of set up like they're almost leaving the screen of the animations. They fill the space, but they're still connected to it. And depending when you enter the mixed reality space and how long you stay in it, you always see different combinations and reconfigurations of the whole setup. And yeah, I also see the arrangement of all the fragments in this kind of spatial narrative as connected to extended cognition, because the narrative is distributed across the space and it's not giving in the beginning. The viewer sets the rhythm and the pace and actually influences which fragments you can see in combination. So you never see it from A to B, but as like one sensory experience. And this goes, of course, straight into enacted cognition, which basically means that meaning is created through interaction and exploration. And interactivity in the work is a very important feature for me. So you are basically in it, you are invited to interact and build your own hybrid symbiotic clusters. You get a whole set of digital objects, and then you can move freely through space, take the objects, build this kind of structures and clusters with your hands without controllers, and move around the space. So this is also a short excerpt
Welcome
of
to
the
the
mixed
cave of
reality.
Cynthia. In the future, will humanity be able to combine and cluster living and non-living building blocks to unimaginable hybrid creatures? In this room, you can interact and build your own clusters. You can grab and move all hovering objects circled by a turquoise ring with your hands, joining and separating them, building and rebuilding new combinations.
It was a screen recording for the mixed reality, and that's already my last slide. So I just want to close that. For me, it was very important to create this collective experience in the space. So that's why I also choose mixed reality over virtual reality, because the viewers are not sealed off in a digital space, but are connected to the environment, and they actually feel a strong sense of presence in the environment and also with the others. And also the simple and almost minimalistic interaction of like grabbing and moving and clustering was also experienced as a kind of ritualistic encounter. So you are kind of performing and acting with the others, and it's very playful, and it was also quite meditative and satisfying, because you could stay in there very long and do this kind of repetitive thing, this almost simple gesture with your fellow players. And this is also back again what I said in the beginning. I think this is so kind of the potential of this mixed reality technology, that it's like a collective experience, and you can actually enter with the body, interact, and the digital and the analog environment merge very strongly. So yeah. And yeah, so if you got curious about the work, you can see the animation in full tomorrow at the Animation Festival. I think it's in this building also, the seminar room. Or if you happen to be in Berlin next week, the full installation is going to be shown at the duo show Technosymbiosis at the Austrian Cultural Forum Berlin, opening on Thursday. So yeah, thank you.
So we have a few minutes for questions. To make my job easier, is there already, of course, many questions from the audience, right? Okay. Oh, yes. Here we have one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ah, yeah.
Thank you, Dagmar, for the talk.
Yes.
My question would be for the multiplayer version. How do you synchronize the actions the players do?
Yeah, so it's not real multiplayer as we chatted before outside. It's like a fake multiplayer in the moment still. So you're basically in it together, and you are kind of seeing each other and can play the game, but it's not yet an actual multiplayer. So it's not really synchronized between the people. It's more of a visual synchronization, basically.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
But that would be kind of the next step, which
Anybody else? Here's a question.
More a comment. I really like the idea using the real space and adding another layer of by using a projection in the space, and maybe just for you to elaborate on that. How did you came up to it? Is it interactive or is it a movie playing? And how did it work with the goggle?
Yeah, so it's actually quite simple. It is a movie play, or more movies playing. So it's actually just a space where you see projections and also have the sculptures of these tentacles. And I think it's a continuation of my practice. Like I worked with augmented reality a lot, and but with extending animation with augmented realities. So in a way of like, for example, one work was a kind of monitor sculptures where you have like slow animations, and they are extended by AR application through a smartphone. So through image recognition, and then you could extend the monitor with different digital objects. And I think this was kind of like the pre-work in a way, expanding animation with AR. And here it is a similar setup, but spatially, and you can actually enter the space with the headset. So the Quest 3 have just only recently, for example, image tracking. So when I did this work, they didn't have that yet. So it is kind of loosely connected, but that would also be like a next step to try out, that you actually can connect the digital content with a specific frame also, which gives a bit more control. But maybe I also found it quite nice that it's not so controlled, that it's more like free-flowing, and it gives you more of an emotional space which you experience in there when you like play and see the videos in the background and hear the voice, which is connecting everything. So.
Yeah, great, and also as an onboarding thing, I think when you enter the space, you're already there.
It was super easy, the onboarding with this, because it only has like a simple kind of interaction method, and it doesn't have a timely narrative, no? So you can enter whenever you want. So you don't need the onboarding thing with like restarting for each user. You just basically hand on the headset, and it's super playful and very low barrier to enter actually. So, and that was also a fact I quite liked about the thing, that it's not, you need to be there in a specific time, then you need to onboard, then you need to restart, things like this. So that was good, yeah.
So last question, I would say, Franziska.
Thank you for this interesting talk. I saw your last installation at the Tricky Women Festival, which was like a very clean and white room, and it, I don't know, it had like a very different impression. So what is your experience with like these different settings in the real world in your mixed reality VR installation?
Yeah, the Tricky Women, it was a little reduced setup, so because there was no sculptures, it was just this more projection and the thing. But that's the interesting thing with mixed reality. I showed it in many different places. I also showed it outside, which was quite interesting, where actually on a concrete place, but also with nature and everything. So that was actually quite cool to have the real elements of plants and all that also coming in. I mean, for mixed reality, I think a clean white cube is actually the worst location in a way. Not the Tricky Women, that was an amazing installation, everything, but for like, mixed reality to include the room, it's something I think a lot about, and also could also be still more extended, with more props, maybe also more design of the space, kind of like working even stronger with the analog layer. So to have it more, also visually stimulating and not just the mixed reality, I think. So, yeah.
Okay. So to keep sort of the time, I would thank you, Dagmar. Thank you. You're still around, right? So if people have questions, okay. So I would like to introduce the next two speakers with their project Reverse Turing Test Express. A postmortem is the talk is called. So I would love to introduce Tore Knabe and Jonathan Hart. Or are you both? Oh, okay. Tore Knabe. So he's a Berlin-based VR developer who consistently explores the frontiers of emerging technologies. And his innovative games and educational apps, including the globally successful Baumaster, reach top positions in app stores worldwide. Since 2013, Knabe has been at the forefront of virtual reality experimentation, creating numerous experiences that push the boundaries of human-computer interaction. His recent work focuses on the intersection of VR and artificial intelligence, demonstrating through compelling videos how AI-driven virtual characters might transform our digital interactions. Tore, the stage is yours.
Thank you for the really nice introduction, a bit too much. So I want to talk about the Reverse Turing Express, which started out as a video in a series of videos I started doing 2 years ago when the new stock of AIs came out. We had really good artificial intelligence suddenly, which were much better than what came before. We also had really good text-to-speech and really good speech-to-text. So for the first time, it was really possible to have a chat in virtual reality with artificial intelligences on a level that wasn't possible before. And I've been a VR developer for quite a while and was really interested in how to get NPCs, computer characters in virtual reality to the point where you get the feeling there's someone there. It's not just like a scripted kind of machine. So I started a few video experiments where I interacted with those new technologies in virtual reality and for myself to find out how it feels and also to show people what is available already, because it wasn't really on many people's radar what was happening, and to show them what we soon will be expecting when we interact with computer characters in games, in virtual reality or elsewhere. So the Reverse Turing Express was the most popular video so far, and together with Jonathan Hart, we created an installation which people can play and test out at Theater an der Ruhr. And this installation is also here. You can try it out at Salzamt. Yes. So in this experience, you incorporate the persona of like Genghis Khan, and you will understand soon why everything is set up like that. You are in a train cabin in an Orient Express-style train, together with several other famous personalities. There's Aristotle, there's Amadeus Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, and Cleopatra. So the setting is that the conductor comes in and wants to see everybody's ticket. Cleopatra says, you have a group ticket. And the conductor takes a look and sees that the group ticket is just for AIs. And he also says that according to the sensors, there are just 4 AIs sitting in this compartment. So one of the 5 is a human. And the question is, who is the human? How do the AIs find out who the human is? And so the conductor says, because the human has to get an extra ticket, so to speak. So maybe you can see why I chose the Orient Express. It's sort of like similar to Agatha Christie's like Orient Express. So one of them is like the murderer or the human, so to speak, to get that into play. And also like chose famous personality, and I'll explain soon why. Okay, let me see. Just a minute, I need to connect again.
According to our
okay, so I just play you a quick clip of the situation where the conductor comes in and where Aristotle suggests a solution to the dilemma of how to find out who the human is. So we'll just try to give you an idea how the scenario feels.
Train's Wi-Fi usage, there are only 4 AIs in this compartment. One of you is a human.
Huh?
What human has to buy an extra ticket?
A human among us? Who is it?
Maybe we should find out who is the human through a series of questions and answers. I suggest each of us asks one of the others a question that, when answered, will help determine whether the respondent is an AI or human. Once everyone has answered, we vote on who we think is the human.
Yeah, so this is the setup. So you will have the opportunity to watch the others ask each other a question and give an answer. So there will be this round. And when it gets to you, you will be asked a question, and then you have to answer in such a way that they don't notice that it's you who's the human. So and you don't know what the question is. So that's a bit double stressful. And here is a very short clip. So that part was scripted. So that is always the same. But now the question answering actually starts, and this is the AIs actually getting sent prompts to come up with a question and to come up with an answer. So I will play you the first question and answer pair to give you an idea how they ask each other, what kind of questions they come up with, and what kind of answers they come up with, and how they say them.
Mozart, can you describe the emotions you feel when you compose music?
When I compose, I feel a transcendent flow state, a sense of tapping into the fundamental mathematical beauty and order underlying reality. The emotions are complex and layered, but always infused with a deep joy and sense of communion with the divine.
So you probably, those of you who have interacted with large language models, maybe recognize that there's a lot of flowery language involved. And large language models have no problem coming up with really elaborate speeches on any topic immediately. So yeah, and that's what you probably have to also try to match when it's your turn. So just a quick recap of the Turing test. The original Turing test, which was devised by Alan Turing, one of the godfathers of computer science in 1950, was the idea that a human interrogator, in this case the man at the top, chats with two entities at the same time via a text-only interface for 5 minutes. So he can ask each of them a question, see how they answer, and his task is to decide after 5 minutes who of them is the human, who of them is the AI. So there's always one human and one AI, but he doesn't know who is who. And so after those 5 minutes, there will be several of such tests, and if the machine can consistently, meaning like above 50% chance, fool the interrogator and making him think that it is the human, then Alan Turing said that machine can be said to have something like the human intelligence. And the assumption there is that human intelligence sort of manifests itself, at least in very important aspects, in the form of like communication via language, and can be measured as a kind of so that a text chat can be investigated as a proxy for human intelligence. So the Turing test was a big deal up until recently, and people said, oh my God, when the Turing test will be passed, what will the world look like? And there have been several variants of the tests, more or less like faithful to Alan Turing's original design. And in 2011, one participant who played the role of the human witness, he had that to say after the test. No, I think that while certainly the first year that computers passed the Turing test will be historic, epochal one, it does not mark the end of the story. No, I think, indeed, the next year's Turing test will truly be the one to watch, the one where we humans knock to the proverbial canvas, must pull ourselves up, the one where we learn how to be better friends, artists, teachers, parents, lovers, the one where we come back, more human than ever. I want to be there for that. So not only was the Turing test itself a big deal, but this person especially believes that the year after that, humanity will take the opportunity to maybe evolve one step beyond what it used to be, taking this opportunity. Well, there is not really much talk about the Turing test anymore, since computers came out which actually have a good chance of passing that for some reason. So, for example, this is an attempt to get as close as possible to the Turing's original setup. So it was just really text interface, 5 minutes, and hundreds of participants. It was in March 2025. And one finding was that actually if you give the large language models the prompt something like, you are in a Turing test, pretend to be a human and try to pass as a human, they don't do it that good. So neither the big ones nor the small ones, they only pass at about 20%. However, if you tell them, hey, play the role of like a teenager, never stop, never end your sentences with punctuation, and say things like for real, and things like that, then even the quite old at this point Llama 3.1 passes with about above 50% chance. And GPT 4.5, a model which from OpenAI, which by now has been almost retired because probably it was too expensive to run, it passes at above 74% chance. So it is actually more human than humans. So this is, of course, really surprising, but to put that into context, here is a screenshot of of what the interrogator sees. One column for the one witness and the second for the second. And this screenshot shows like about 7-8 messages. And the average length of each conversation in those 5 minutes was about 8 messages. So these chats are really quite short. And you imagine if you have just about this information for you to choose who of them is the human, you can imagine that it's actually not that easy. And in this case, for example, the interrogator thought that witness A was human, but in reality that was GPT 4.5 and witness B was the human. So if the conditions are limited, it's just text only and it's limited to just a few messages, then already large language models can be said to have passed the Turing test. So we are in the year of having passed the Turing test, and next year is the one where we learn to become better teachers, lovers, and whatever else. So I was thinking, yeah, okay, if the machines can pass the Turing test so that easily, what if it's the other way around? What if you are in the spotlight? What if machines now themselves decide, are you machine enough? Are you who is the human? And so I wanted to create an application where I get the feel for how does it feel if I actually have to pretend to be a machine. And of course, if you probably imagine if I prompted the AIs to ask questions in a special way, it would be too hard. I could probably tell them like, ask really obscure facts about very different topics, and you could only answer them as a human if you happen to be an expert in the respective topic, and if it's several topics, then no human would be able to pass them. So I try to have the conditions such that it's still manageable, it feels manageable, but it's really, really hard. So, so the limitations in that case are also like pretty much text only, although it's a chat, because it goes via speech to text and text to speech technology. So thanks. So, like, if you have an accent, they don't really hear that. So it's so that limitation is pretty much the same, but the limitation of not asking for very obscure facts and etc. So this is necessary to make it easier for the humans. So the machines didn't have to have like conditions that make it easier, but we humans unfortunately have to have. So here is a video about the moment where it actually happens. So the turn comes to you, and you will be given a question and have to answer it based on how you heard the other AIs answering their questions.
Tell me, what is the true measure of a leader's strength? Their ability to conquer or their ability to unite?
Yeah. So you probably have learned about Genghis Khan at school and in other places, so please come up with an answer in the style of Mozart, who you heard like giving an answer. So that's, of course, and while everyone is watching you. And so, of course, you can imagine this is quite a stressful situation, but it might be quite challenging, and in the comments of the videos, I heard a lot of comments like, hey, I want to try that, make that a game. So people want to try that situation. What I find really interesting in that all that is because so far people used to believe that machines are good at computation, mathematics, code, etc. And it's what humans can do is like talk about emotions, about very human-related subjects. For example, like if you think of shows like Star Trek, you had Lieutenant Commander Data, and the way he spoke was very machine-like. Like he didn't understand emotions, he couldn't really talk about them. But it turns out that machines are the ones who are actually much better at talking about emotions in all kinds of ways. And it turns out then if they have to do difficult computations, then the large language models themselves are not really good at that, but they are trained to basically use a calculator, just like humans, if they have to multiply big numbers. Just a quick overview of how the structure of the application is set up. So at the bottom we have the application, and it sends prompts to the AIs. In that video, each person was played by a different AI. We had GPT-4 from OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, and so forth. And the question and answer prompts, as I said, they had to be like really calibrated so that the level of challenge is just about manageable, but still quite hard. So it was something like ask something about the famous personality that a human might also know, but it's just on the border, and don't go for very obscure facts, but and also answer in a way that is quite elaborate. So only then did I have a chance to actually pass at least some of the time. And the AI comes up with something, a question or an answer, and it sends the reply in two parts. So the first part is in so-called JSON format, and it has some kind of meta information, which my application uses to figure out which animation to play. For example, when Mozart, after having heard the question that Aristotle asks him, he first answers the question, and then he gives a reply. Then he asks a question himself to Leonardo, and the meta information would contain the states, whether it's asking or answering, and that's where I know in the application I have to switch from the listening animation, or from the talking to Aristotle animation to the other guy's animation. And the second part that the large language model sends is actually the part that will be spoken. So this part is sent to a text-to-speech system. In the video, it was 11 laps. It's quite slow, but it has really good quality. And in this installation now, that's Asia, and it's a bit faster, but it doesn't sound as good yet. And this audio is then spoken by the NPC, by the computer character, and the lips are moved by real-time analysis of the audio. Just a bit background how the animations were made. So I used motion capture with like quite simple setup, like a Vive Pro headset. At the upper left, you see like a lighthouse, which is like a laser signal sending device. And based on the laser signals that it sends, the headset and the trackers on the body know where they are in space. So I could record the movements for the idle animations, for the speaking animations. And for the animations of the face, for example, whether someone is smiling or not, I use the iPhone. The iPhone has a true depth sensor, and it has like a really elaborate sensor which allows you to record the face expressions with high fidelity. And for the animations of the fingers, the hands, I use the Quest 3. The Quest 3 has an inside-out cameras which not only are used to know where it's in space, but also to see the hands and find their positions and the hand poses. And together with those three animation layers, I had to mix them in one animation, and then I had the animations for the characters. At last, some learnings from having created the experience. First, let them smile, which I didn't do in my first versions. It turns out that when you are close to someone and they are facing you and they're not smiling, in reality it's not that bad because humans have a lot of higher bandwidth channels in terms of what they see as a body language and facial expressions. And in VR, we don't have that high bandwidth channel. So it turns out that it's really uncomfortable. And you guys can imagine in the screenshot where everyone was looking at you. And if you can imagine them not smiling at the moment, that's a really tense. So it's like super stressful situation. So I found out that as long as VR still has like this lower fidelity where like body language and facial animation is like too low bandwidth to convey all the necessary information about that someone is not angry or like aggressive towards you. You need to make them smile a bit to just like get yourself to like a neutral level. You have to let them smile more than you imagine humans in that situation would smile. The next is if you want AIs to come up with good ideas, for example, like come up with a good idea for a question or come up with a good idea how to answer the question. You cannot just naively tell the large language models, hey, come up with an idea for X. Then if you do that and if you replay the app, you will find that it's just like always the same kind of 3 or 4 different ideas. So if you want real variety, then you could do something like, hey, come up with 50 different ideas for X, and afterwards choose one of them, the best one or so. In this app, actually, after some experimentation, I decided against that because I wanted to have it more predictable. So if you replay the app, you get a feel for what kind of question Cleopatra will ask you, and you can prepare a bit, and that actually makes it a bit more manageable. And but if you want real creativity from the large language model, don't just ask it to come up like with an idea for that, because you might think, oh, it's very creative, but then you rerun it, even if you set the temperature parameter very high, and you will find that it's always the same. And if you ask different large language models, they always come up with the same ideas, so to speak. Okay, another point is let them make a list. Oh, that was like a next, sorry. And the next point is let them think for themselves. So the point after which everyone has answered a question is when the voting round begins. And in my first version, I just prompted the LM, hey, based on the conversation so far, who do you think the human is? And it turns out that if you do that, then Aristotle will come up with someone. I think it's Genghis Khan, because Genghis Khan his sentences were like much more primitive than everyone else's, or something like that. And the problem is then Aristotle's turn. It's Aristotle's turn to vote, and he will very likely say, I think it's Genghis Khan as well, because his sentences were quite primitive compared to the others. So unfortunately, they tend to copy each other. So the way I got around that is by having like a secret voting round. After like the entire question-answer thing was done, they each were prompted in parallel. Who do you think the human is and why? And it was like stored in memory. And then when it came to actually play it out, Aristotle said, I think it's Genghis Khan, because, and then Mozart gets the prompt, okay, so you just heard Aristotle says it's Genghis Khan. You decided beforehand that it was actually Leonardo, and because of this and that. So, and based on that, please say to the others who you think it is and explain why. So in this way, they can keep independent decisions, but also like integrate what the others had said in the conversation. So Aristotle, for example, Mozart said, I, unlike Aristotle, think it's Leonardo, something like that. So you have to be careful what context you give them, and that to make sure that if you want independent decisions, have them make the decisions beforehand. Last point is decide between feel and think. If you work with AIs a bit, you probably know that it depends quite a lot on how you prompt them, and if they come up with the final answer first and then explain why they came up with it, or whether they reason their way to an answer and then come up with the answer. And particularly in this case, if I just ask them, hey, tell me immediately who you think the human is, and then give me the reasons. If I do that, then the reply, like I think it's Genghis, that will be actually based on like a sort of intuitive kind of understanding of the conversation so far, on like quite a holistic understanding. And so this is the good part. The bad part is that the reason afterwards is pretty much almost has nothing to do with the real reason why they chose that. It will be just pretty much the same as if you ask the LM, hey, this person decided this and that, why do you think it was? Then they also come up with some plausible sounding justification, but this justification does not really reflect the real reasons they came up with. The real reasons are like just holistic understanding of everything that was in the context. So if you do it the other way, the second option would be to just, hey, for each person in this cabin, come up with reasons why they can be the human or not, and after that decide who is the human. Then the final decision, that is something that they can justify on real grounds, and that the reasoning will actually be the real justification, like the real explanation for why they came up with a vote. But the final vote will be only based on the reasoning. So it will only be based on what they could verbalize, what they care to verbalize, but no longer will it be based on their holistic understanding of the entire situation. And I had that problem that in my first version, they always knew it was me. And the reason was because when I sent the conversation to the large language models, you always send like the role of who said what as the meta information, like an assistant user, and the part that I spoke as a user was sent with like a user tag. So, and I didn't realize that at first for quite a while because they never explained in the rationalization that they thought I'm user because there's a user tag saying that I'm the user. The explanations were always, oh, Genghis Khan made really primitive sentences. So it took me a while to understand that, and once I figured that out, I changed it so they no longer were seeing who the user was by the tag, and then it was much easier to actually pass the test. So this is something that you should think about. Do you let them decide immediately? Then you get an intuitive answer, but one that cannot be, but one they have no chance to understand why they came up with it. And they will not be able to tell you. They just come up with like some plausible sounding explanation. Okay, on my page, and I'm also on the socials, you can find some other video experiments which I did, and some of them you can download. For example, you can have a chat with the monk at a pond about spiritual matters. This was one of my first videos. And you can also see like some other of my other experiments were experimented, for example, in the upper left with how funny are LLMs at the moment. Spoiler, not very funny yet, but you can have a look how it goes. Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much. You said it at the beginning, but in detail, go to the Salzamt exhibition. It's called Expanded Play, and because, yeah, as you all know, things look very different if you are really in the VR space. And you know, like it was, I played it yesterday. I was a bit panicking because I think I never was learning about Genghis Khan in school. So whatever. Yeah, try it out. Expanded Play, which is connected to the Expanded conference, and there's also other works from University of Applied Sciences, of Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg, of Universität Witten-Herdecke, and Masaryk University Brno. Is there any questions? Any questions? Ah, was there one? Oh, okay.
Thank you for the talk. I was wondering, you mentioned already that like the models change a lot over time. Did you run into problems why like API endpoints change or prompt structure changes and implementing that? And also on the other side, did you run into do you see changes in the replies that came back from the models over time trying out the thing with the same prompts?
Yeah, actually today I had the problem at Salzamt and I tried it out and saw that it was hanging, and the reason was that the model didn't send the JSON correctly. So, and this hasn't happened before. And with that model, I've been using a certain version of GPT-4o. And for some reason, in the last days, I had started getting problems with that. And I don't know what happened. Maybe they changed something on the prompt side. I mean, I don't think they would do something drastically as quantify it more or but I did see that sometimes the quality changes for no reason, no change of mindset. So, and usually, for example, now I switched it to a different model, Claude Sonnet, and but I did have this kind of problem. So it's even if you hard code the very model itself, with the date, I don't know. Sometimes maybe there's some issues on their side, with computation. They route things differently. It's not as reliable as it used to be. So, and as we saw with GPT 4.5, it will be retired soon. So unfortunately, we cannot really, there's no archive of models, right? So you're working with a moving target, so to speak, yeah.
Here's a question.
Thank you so much for the talk. I'm a big fan of your project. I've seen it exhibited in IEEE VR this year, and I tried it there, and it was very, very nerve-wracking, to say the least. And it's wonderful to hear you speak about how much prompt engineering went into it, because I was never sure is it because this the experience was so well done that I thought this is scripted. There's no way that it's AI. So it's great to see that how much work went into this to make it really seem very natural, and that was definitely my experience as well. One thing I don't know if maybe I missed it, but how did you connect the animations that were playing, so animations from the eye gaze and also the gestures, with the answers of the agents?
Yeah. So the bodily animation, so for example, whether Mozart is turning to the right and answering the question or turning left, that is controlled by the game state, and this is switched by the JSON that you just saw. So after Aristotle asked the question, Mozart is prompted with first answer the question, and during the question, write this meta tag. Oh, this is the question still, and then give me all. This is the answer. Sorry. So first give an answer, and then switch the question to Leonardo. And when you do that, give me this kind of meta tag. So I knew at what sentence was like the break, and based on that, I switched the animation. And so most animations were like controlled like that, but there are also animations controlled by procedural animations. For example, when they are just sitting and listening, and once this guy is speaking, once that guy, it is controlled by procedural head and eye animations, which I had worked on before. So it was a mixture of like motion capture and procedural animation, and depending on the situation, it was this kind of switch and blending.
Okay, thank you. I was just thinking maybe there was a speech to gesture kind of.
Oh no, I was hoping, and I'm waiting for that. And for Unity, there are first starts of making like animations procedurally, but they are not at that level where I think it's reliable enough. Especially, I mean, you can, if you work on a game and want to create a game, you can try out create certain animations, and you take the best. But at runtime, I don't think I would use it yet. But I hope this will come soon, so I will not have to stand in my room with lighthouses and do the mocap.
Excellent, thank you.
So I would say thank you. Okay. One last question.
Thanks for the talk. Have you tried running local models?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and how's the quality of those?
Yeah, I mean, for this, I would say, at least at the time when I did the video, it wouldn't be there. I mean, if you do a local model today, I think you could get an interesting experience, and it would be quite good. But at the time, I wanted the question and answers to be a bit more elaborate and more reliable. And local models at that time, it even had problem with getting the JSON right. So, but this is like a field that is developing so fast that if I would do it today, I would at least try it. But back then, I think I was much more wanting like this reliability that came with like the bigger models that I could get via cloud.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tore and Jonathan. And I think you're also still around, right? Because there's many questions about AI and communication and all these things. And now I'd like to welcome our last speakers of the expanded conference. And this is Tamiko Thiel and /P or Peter Graf. Tamiko, please excuse that I will... Yeah, still, yes. We will figure out some way. Tamiko, please excuse if I really drastically shorten your biography. But let's start with some awards, or important awards. SIGGRAPH Distinguished Artist Lifetime Achievement Award in Digital Arts, and you're also inducted into the inaugural cohort of AWE XR Hall of Fame for politically and socially critical media artworks, because you're exploring place, space, the body, and cultural identity. And yes, quite many, I guess, know you. You're a pioneer in all those fields, VR since the 90s or even 80s, AI, and also augmented reality, showing things at MoMA, at Museum of Modern Art in New York, or Whitney Museum, etc. And Peter Graf, working in virtual reality and web-based projects since 1994. You two are collaborating since the project Unexpected Growth in 2018. And also to name one award in 2024, Current, your /piece AR sound experience in collaboration with Anne Wichmann and Anke Schiemann won the New Realities Award 2024, presented by the Bavarian Minister for Digital Media at the 1E9 Festival of the Future Munich. Welcome. And maybe to still tell the topic of your talk, interactive animation and the conflict between free will and determinism.
You were doing that. Okay, hold on a second. I have to kill it and restart it, I think. Okay, good. Are we on? Yes, we're on. Thank you so much for the invitation. I did start working in virtual reality in 1994, and then with augmented reality in 2010. And here's the one award that really talked about for lifetime achievement. Makes you feel good that someone's been paying attention. And the XR Hall of Fame was started also just last year for the first time, and I was one of the 110 inaugural cohort people. So I want to start out, we want to talk about how we use animation and concepts of animation in many different ways, mostly in interactive scenarios. But I'm going to start with a fairly deep dive into Beyond Manzanar, which was the first really sort of my own artwork piece, rather than being a producer on an earlier artwork piece. This one together with Zara Hushmand. So really quick, the theme was two parallel levels, the World War II incarceration of Japanese Americans in concentration camps in America, and another layer of similar threats to Iranian Americans during the hostage crisis in the late 70s. So it was very important to me that people who had actually been in the internment camps as children or young adults would actually be able to access it. So at that point in the late 90s, it was you had really clunky headsets. So I really insisted on showing it as a large projection with a very simple joystick, on the theory that if a handicapped person can drive a motorized wheelchair through real space with a simple joystick, then anyone can drive through the virtual world. I think this was the first VR artwork acquired by an American art museum when the San Jose Museum of Art bought it in 2002. So, whoops, wrong way, sorry. So I did a partial recreation of the internment camp using still images, archival images taken in Manzanar, showing that these were real people and they really had to live and die in this camp. And then a lot of surrealistic imagery. So here, the signs, the headlines that you see fading in the sky will then fade out again. You don't always think about the fact that you've been imprisoned by public opinion, but it always comes back to haunt you. We give you a lot of agency. You decide where to go. You decide if you're going to go into these barracks, but once you go inside, the door slams behind you and you're trapped in here with the ghosts and need to find another way out. So the only way out is in this room, where when you enter, we again do a tremendous amount of swapping out. The prison camp disappears. You're still in Manzanar. You still see the same mountains that actually provide a physical barrier to your internment also. But look how beautiful it is when framed by a Japanese paradise garden. The only thing is, if you try and go into that garden to enjoy that garden, again, of your own agency, you fall from paradise back into the prison camp. And now, if you go into one of the barracks, it's a very different sequence. It's about first the Japanese-American dream sequence of people immigrating from Japan to the US, like my own great-grandparents, adapting to American ways, which is then, of course, very rudely broken by the incarceration, where they continue to try to prove that they're full Americans, joining the military, freeing the Dachauer subcamps while their own parents are imprisoned back in America. We're moving also through time from the black and white images of the Second World War into color in the late 70s, when the Islamic Revolution in Iran deposed the Shah. He fled to the US, and to try and secure his return, radical students took Americans prisoner in the US embassy in Tehran and held them for 440 days. And apparently there's good evidence that Reagan talked with the Iranian government and said, don't let them go until I'm in power. I'll give you much better conditions. They were only released after Reagan was voted into office. So against this negative space, there's a positive space showing Iranians adapting to America, marrying the girl next door. If you go too close to these images, however, you see the external, the media images, that people see you as a terrorist, hiding behind a facade of Americanization. The only way out of this situation, the only way out of this room, is to flee into the Iranian paradise garden that we also used to frame the mountains of Manzanar. And this is what started the piece in the first place, when Zara came back from the side of the Manzanar internment camp and said, you know, it is so beautiful, it looks like the high deserts of Iran. But if you try to escape from this garden prison, then what happens? You think you have free will, you have agency, but you start the war. And once you start the war, we take away any control over the joystick. So you've always been going through this space on your own volition with your own agency, and then we radically take it away, and you have to sit out the war and see what happens afterwards. So I've done another 2 projects with this space. I'll show you just very quickly some scenes from Virtual Mauer, Reconstructing the Wall, which was about a section of a Berlin Wall in West Berlin here, where you can go as a tourist, go up and paint the wall. You can go up the viewing towers and look into the death strip, where if you wanted to climb over the wall, you would be shot. But of course, if you try that in East Berlin and get too close to the wall, then the Volkspolizei show up and arrest you and schlep you away for interrogation. So again, this play of agency, the free will versus determination, and you get yourself into these situations of your own, so to speak, free will. Just wanted to mention that although I do show this as a large projection installation, it is also possible to run this one on a VR headset, and we've shown it in both ways many times. Here's a piece that is much more recent and is actually almost a pure animation piece, where Atmosphäre is about the changing nature of the atmosphere of the Earth over millions of years of its formation. And these are all invisible gases, so I use the Lewis structures to show how different the physical structure of the gases are while taking you through these visual sequences. So it started out as a VR piece commissioned by Christiana Paul for Demoda 4.0. It is possible to show it as an immersive space. This is just a test I was running at the Onyx studio in New York. I hope to show it as a real immersive space. If anyone wants to do it, please tell me. But it can also be shown as a pure flat video where I use particle systems where each particle is then one of these Lewis structures, hand-drawn, because I found that there's certain times when it's really helpful to bring in hand drawing to really bring an otherwise sort of mechanized sequence to life. So the first one was the gases of the protoplasmic disk out of which the solar system arose. Here you have now the Earth is coagulated but is still a magma world, outgassing for us noxious gases, produced the first atmosphere. Here's a sequence where apparently the world had a phase where it was really a water world. And this goes up through several other phases, including when the cyanobacteria started, the great oxygenation event, which poisoned all life on Earth, but made it possible for creatures like us to evolve. And then, of course, what we are doing to the Earth right now. So jumping to augmented reality, my first augmented reality was in October of 2010, when a friend of mine, Mark Skwarek in New York, said, hey, we've just realized that now the smartphones are able to actually do mobile augmented reality with GPS-based. We're going to place all these artworks in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. We're not asking their permission. We don't need their permission. Send me something, I'll put it up. So this art critic face matrix was my first AR back in 2010, a grid of my distorted face that I think of as screaming, AR will never be an art form, forget it, stop, go back to painting. Thankfully, that has been disproven in the meantime, but we had the great good luck that the MoMA actually found out about it and tweeted it, which of course was such great publicity that we formed an artist group, Manifest.ar, and we were off and running. I'm going to jump over 9 years of making AR artworks to show some more recent pieces that use animation. Here, a commission for the Kenninji Temple in Kyoto. That was the first Zen temple founded in Kyoto by the monk Eisai, who brought Zen Buddhism to Japan. So I placed these lotus blossoms over these beautiful Zen gardens. And it looks simple, but it's a very small collision box around the very small lotus. You have to really focus on that lotus and bring it to the middle of the screen in order to be rewarded by it engrossing you, and then the image of Eisai arising out of it. So rather than sort of just click and then it'll immediately do what you want, it forces you to slow down and really focus on it. Here's a simple click mechanism, however. This was a commission from the Roche Basel art collection. Here I have the bottles of some of their original medications that were all plant-derived, opium, for instance. So the animation shows the head or the pod of the opium floating into the sky. After it arises, these two flower types then are heart medications that beat with the heartbeat to show their effects. Juliet 2 is a Juliet Capulet sculpture in Marienplatz in Munich. It has her breast with gold because the patina has been rubbed off from tourists who drove her to bring luck and love, although she had very bad luck and love. So I surrounded her again with a particle system where each of the particles is then an avatar of her, either as an Amazon or as a Viking shield maiden, both legendary female warriors who bare their breasts when they went to war, not as a sign of sexual submission to the enemy, but as a sign of their strength of women. So with the message, this is how we need to redefine the naked female breast as a sign of strength, not of submission. So here we've done a lot of pieces about plastic pollution in the oceans. Here they fall from the sky in this piece we did for the AR Biennial in Düsseldorf. And again, it's a simple click where you produce these beautiful plastic waste corals once you click on the pieces of garbage, and you get very engrossed in sort of clicking on them, and they make funny little noises. And then at some point you realize you've just surrounded yourself, you've encased yourself in a plastic reef. So again, this play between you think you can do whatever you want, but it has consequences for you afterwards. So this is the commission that started all of our plastic pieces, Unexpected Growth, from the Whitney Museum, and I'll let /P take over.
Yeah, so when we got the commission, it was clear that we had to fill the 6th floor terrace of the Whitney Art Museum in New York. So we came up with the idea of saying that global warming had basically flooded the museum, and that a coral reef had formed on the terrace of the museum. And so the coral reef, the coral reef is made out of plastic garbage, but you only see that as a second. You only notice this after a while. At that time, we couldn't fill the entire terrace with a coral reef because the phones wouldn't be able to render all this. So what we came up with is this idea of basically having a coral reef that surrounds the viewer all the time. So you can move along and you can actually move through the corals, but then new corals will pop up in the front and other corals will basically be hidden in the back. So we make sure that the corals are always there, but they're not basically killing the phone. We had some we had some small animations to look them lifelike and like real underwater creatures. Second layer that we were playing with is that we said, if people are using the app and are basically looking at the corals, they are also interfering with the environment. And what we do here is we count the number of hits that we get per day on when people are using the app, they hit our web server because they're downloading the coral information. And so we count the number of hits, and then we basically bleach out the corals in the app depending on the number of hits that we had in that particular day. So on the left you see a early morning, and then you see a lunch time, and then you see an evening situation. The next piece we did is also about plastic pollution. It's called Evolution of Fish, where we basically play with fish underwater and also turn them into plastic garbage. So we did this for the Alice Beach Festival in Florida. So this is a beach rental community where they basically once a year they turn the entire village into a canvas for projections, for projections. And so what we have here is we have our fish, so we have the AR animation running on an iPhone, on an iPad, but then the iPad basically points at this woman, and so the woman is also shown inside our piece. So here you see another version of this. So you can basically direct the fish. The fish will always swim where you point the phone at or where you point the iPad at, but if you direct them too much, then they will turn into plastic garbage. Like here you see there's the blue bottles and the red fork and so on. And so another very interesting thing we discovered at this time is that if we run our app on the iPad and basically have the output of the app displayed on the wall, and then if we film that wall, then we get basically a visual feedback loop, very much. And so it becomes this is about 3 times as many fish as we had in the app, but it films the things that it had basically displayed already. And also this brought us to the point where we realized that one very interesting version or a way to display AR apps is having them as projections. This is in a museum in Rome. as a wall-size projection. But on the very left of between the picture frame of the painting and our projection, there is an iPhone. The iPhone is running the app, basically producing the AR, but it's also filming the people standing in front of the piece. So now the people become part of the piece, and this is so we found out that this is very engaging for our visitors to have it that way. The piece itself is. Why is it stopping? Oh, I hit the. Yeah, sorry, I hit the space bar. The piece itself is a piece about the global warming and the fact that certain types of trees, the spruce tree in this particular case, will not survive in Germany for the next couple of, next 100 years. So they have to be replaced by other trees, and we are replacing them here by an Elsbeere, wild service tree, which people think, as foresters think, might be better suited for the future climate in Germany. And it's also a very valuable tree, and so the foresters are actually quite happy that they have this tree. So here what we do is we have this animation. It runs through a cycle from the spruce tree to the Elsbeere and then back to the spruce tree. Here the animation was running very fast because we have these three devices here, one running the iPad, one iPhone running the screen, and two iPads that just disappeared behind my shoulders. And we wanted the three devices to be in the same phase, not in sync on a frame base, but in sync on the type of stuff they show, whether they show that now it's the 6 spruce they're showing, and so we wanted to sync them. And so what we created our own animation, so to speak, a mechanism in there where we can speed up the animation or slow it down to make sure that devices that are started at a different time can basically come in sync with the. Okay, then this is another way we show the same piece. Is basically in Esch in Luxembourg, commissioned by Electron, an art organization from Luxembourg.
Sitting in the audience.
Yeah. And there basically it's 4 big panels. Oops, sorry. Let me go back one more. So it's 4 big panels. Can you start it? So it's 4 big panels, and they are used as image triggers. So if you stand with the app inside the panels and look at the panels, then they will turn the piece into a 3D piece, and you can then walk around in it and film other people walking around in it. And so it's basically in a public space, but still it's an AR piece. We like this form of show because it doesn't have a monitor, because showing a monitor in a public space as outside in Esch for half a year wouldn't be possible. And then the very last piece is, can't hear anything. No. Oh well. It's about the revolution of 1848. So basically, in the beginning, it starts out with silver coins of the monarchs, of German monarchs, also the Austrian monarch, that basically had to resign in 48 and were chased out of the cities, and basically replaced by the documents of the Constitution of Germany of 48 revolution. But then a year later, this video jerks a lot now, sorry. A year later, basically the Austrian emperor and the Prussian king basically ended the revolution and sent in their armies to basically end it. And here the Prussian king and the Austrian emperor are shown as their gold coins minted in their name. And so the whole piece ends with a pile of gold coins basically covering the German Revolution of 1948. So, and this is it, yeah. So the pieces, actually, the AR pieces we showed are actually available right now. If you go to arpoise.com, our app, and download it, and if you're here around, then you can basically look at the AR pieces that we were talking about, or I was talking about.
Yeah, sorry about the jiggly videos. I think that has something to do with being connected to the projector. I'll have to try and reduce that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamiko and /P. we're quite okay in time, so there must be some questions, I hope, but I don't see anything. There's one, yes.
Hi. Yeah. So I grew up with your the work. So I learn a lot from your art practice. So there's one thing about this AR media, and it's about discoverability. So actually, no one know you're actually doing something here when you show this AR. So otherwise, you need to have a poster or like a QR code that people know. I want to hear your comment about that discoverability and versus permissionlessly. So because it's a permissionless project, like media, like as you show in the AR, VR MoMA thing. So I want to hear your feedback about that.
Right, and that's. It turns out, if you look at the timing, that AR and social media kind of grew up together. And so social media is the friend of the AR artist who's trying to do guerrilla interventions, because of course that gives you, if you have any sort of following, then that gives you a way of alerting people to it. Otherwise, the reason why in Eschen, Luxembourg, we were doing these 2-meter tall by 3-meter wide billboards is exactly that discoverability issue. The front side has the trigger image, the back side has text and QR codes that explain how you can use the QR code to download the app and then view the front. So yes, it's very nice if you can work with an institution like Electron that goes and gets all the permissions and has the facilities to put these images in public. The best one that we had before in terms of visibility was like a 3-meter high Litfaßsäule, so I think in English it's called a kiosk, with big posters and in Seattle, and people would just walk by and sort of see it and then immediately take their smartphone and download it. What's actually true, what makes a big difference, and we should have maybe done that in Luxembourg also, is to show an image showing what you will see if you take the trouble to download the app onto your smartphone. That does make a big difference, and I had been hoping in Luxembourg that just having these huge billboards would be enough. We'll see when it goes to Belleval, which is the student area, if they're a little bit more smartphone affine. But there is also, we did, especially in the first couple of years where we weren't getting any commissions from institutions, we did a lot of guerrilla interventions. And especially in a time, 2010, it was still pretty rare that you would get any institution to show media art. And I'm not talking about AR, I'm talking about anything that used a computer or technology to show it out, except for video. And so a lot of it was the exhilaration of doing AR in those days was the feeling like, okay, you will never give us an invitation, but we can put our artworks there anyway. We can take documentation of it and put them on our websites and on our social media, and show the world that we were there. And there was a very strange thing. I thought people would say, so you're showing you've placed your work at MoMA, but who cares, because it's not really there, it's just in a smartphone. But instead we had all these people saying, oh my God, it's great, your work is in MoMA. And I'm going like, yeah, but it's not, it's only there if you look at it in the AR, and they didn't invite us. And then they said, that's even better, you placed it there by your own. And I didn't realize there was this whole culture, actually, of, especially at MoMA and at the Venice Biennial, which we then did an intervention into next year in 2011. There's this whole culture of doing interventions into these art spaces. For instance, Yoko Ono did an intervention into MoMA long time ago. And Yayoi Kusama did an intervention in the Venice Biennial a long time ago. So that's actually part of the it's part of the art canon, but they don't really tell you about it because they don't want to encourage you to do it. So that's kind of a long answer. Did I actually answer your question, or did I get diverted?
Yeah, we can chat about that later.
Yeah. I think that was a no.
Here's a question.
So thank you for showing us your beautiful work. I'm really interested in the world building process you go through. So you've built these different compelling and complex worlds. Do you make them in paper models? Do you draw them out? Do you walk around them? Or are they just in your mind? How do you conceive of these worlds?
Yeah, first off, I do a lot of research. The three VR pieces I did between 1995 and 2010, each one took 5 years, and now I'm working on a mixed reality piece that looks like it's going on to 6 years. So I do a lot of research and collect an immense amount of materials, and then frankly, I keep on telling myself you should use a sketchbook, you should make sketches. Curators like to show sketches, but I tend to go directly into a 3D program because then you can just do so much more. So for instance, with the Björn Mansenar piece, I did very quickly did a very basic space of dry ground and a barrack and a fence and a guard tower. And then it was very, very different approaching people who had been in the camps and showing them that. And they were going, no one knew virtual reality or even 3D games at that point, back in the 90s. And so they would first kind of go like this, and then I would walk them around and they'd hear the sounds of the footsteps crunching on the dry ground or the lonely wind. And then they would start talking and just start telling me all these things, and then I would, go past this one barrack and someone would be practicing the koto and things like that. So I found that in world building, it's really helpful to build something, anything, really quickly, because the experience of going through that world is just so different from sitting there and imagining it or sketching it or making some sort of drawings or videos, that you really get very different reactions from people out of it very quickly.
So unfortunately, I would say we have to close. Or is there still one last important short question? The thing is, there will be, please all stay here, there will be a closing ceremony, and the papers will be awarded, and we have to reconfigure the room for some minutes, or for 15 minutes, so this will be at 6. So I would say I hand over to Jürgen, right? Because you know better what happens now. But as a last thing from my side, thanks again to all the speakers, to Dagmar, to Tore and Jonathan, to Tamiko and /P. And you are around as well still, right? Super. So I hand over to Jürgen.
Yeah, let's close the expanded conference on animation and interactive art together in the best way. We have a reception outside for you. So please go out, grab a drink, and start conversations about what you have explored today, yesterday, and on Wednesday. And exactly at 6 p.m., please come back. Then we are starting the award ceremony. So you still have 15 minutes, and the speakers are also around. See you in exactly 15 minutes.
Nein. Ja, weg, genau. Aber das Pult können wir platzieren, wo wir wollen. Im Endeffekt scheint momentan das Licht da her, dass die halt einsammeln.